Bhadram karnevi shrunuyama devaham Bhadram pashe makshabhirya jatram Sthirirangaye stoshtovagum sastanuvihi Vishima devahitin yadayu Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Lord, may we hear with our ears what is auspicious. May we see with our eyes what is good. May we, strong in limbs and body, sing your praise and enjoy the life allotted to us by you. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Friends, we are very happy that we have a wonderful guest speaker today, Oughton, who is the Associate Professor of St. Louis University. We are trying to observe Swami Vivekananda's 125th anniversary of his appearance at the Parliament of Religions in Chicago. So the Vedanta movement in the West, last 125 years, which is a historical landmark. We are going to have a big function on the 19th of May in the Cultural Center of Hindu Temple. Javij also will speak there. Javij also spoke from our temple another time, and a few other times. He brought his pilgrims group. Many, many years he did that kind of thing. He is the, as I said, he is the Associate Professor of St. Louis University. He is the founder and organizer of the St. Louis Dialogue Group of the World Religions and Philosophies, which has brought together people from different faiths for the last 25 years. I do not find any other person in St. Louis in this area like David, who brought all religious groups in his school and as well as in his college, in the university. Previously, he was teacher of Christian Brothers College, CBC. And I remember he used to invite hundreds of religious representatives in his group. He used to select a subject and we used to speak on that subject. You know, St. Louis is a conservative city. We don't know each other. Each person lives in his own cells. He is the only person, I tell you, I have not seen any person like him in this country, who brought all these people together through his love, through his respect for other religions, his humility, and his tremendous organizing capacity. He's a really interfaith person. He taught over 400 courses in theology and philosophy, world religions, peace studies, Holocaust studies since 1976 at various schools in the St. Louis area. He also made over hundreds of presentations of religious and philosophies at various churches, synagogues, temples, and community centers. Moreover, he attended, after 1993, they have 100 years of Parliament of Religions was observed. He attended. For us, you can see the list that I can see. She came in 1893, 1993, 1999, 2004, 2009, 2015, 2018. All these places he attended. So I was thinking that recently he went to Toronto. I said, David, you will have to come to our temple. and present about this world religions and this interfaith to our members and our devotees. So I am glad that he agreed. And now he will present the Parliament of the World's Religions. There are so many things to know. Do you know what Swami Vivekananda told a story at the Parliament of Religions? Why we disagree. He told just a small story. A ocean frog came to visit his friend, a whale frog. The whale frog said, where are you from? Well, I am from the ocean. How big is that ocean? Oh, it is very big. The whale frog gives a hop. Is it bigger than this place? Oh, don't talk silly. It is ocean is much bigger than the well. He gave another hop and said, is it bigger than this? In this way, he said, don't compare the well with the ocean. Then the well frog became mad at him and said, you get out from this place. There cannot be anything bigger than well. So Swamiji said, the Hindus live in a small well, the Christians live in a small well, all religions live in a small wells, and then they think, they say, there is nothing bigger than the well. But religion is a path. God is the goal. God is infinite. We should not limit God through our limited religious beliefs. The way Swamiji spoke about the universal religions, that is amazing. In the Parliament, each faith was trying to demonstrate the glory of their own faith. But Vivekananda represented all faiths, not only his own faith. That is the reason he broke all the barriers at the Parliament. We shall talk about, we are going to invite 4 speakers for that big function, which will be held in May, I tell you. And today I request David to give his presentation. Thank you.
Swami's been one of my teachers for the last 40 years, and I always look forward to coming here to the Vedanta Society. I've been very fortunate to have attended the 6 modern parliaments of the world's religions held in different places of the world. And I'd like to explain a few things that happened at each of these parliaments and then show you some pictures. The first parliament, you've heard, was back in 1893 as a part of the World's Fair in Chicago. And representatives from many different religions gathered together, and they met at the Art Museum in Chicago from September 4th to October 15th of 1893. And the reason why this is so important is because it was a breakthrough in human history. It was the first time in human history where representatives of all the major religions of the world came together and sat on the same stage as equals. And ever since then, there has been the interfaith movement. Now, Swami just talked about Swami Vivekananda, which I'm sure many of you know about. He was a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna and one of the main Hindu representatives at the 1893 Parliament of the World's Religions. In the summary of the Parliament after it ended, this is how Swami Vivekananda was described. The eloquent monk Vivekananda of Bombay, clad in gorgeous red apparel, his bronze face surmounted with a huge turban of yellow. Can you picture that? He must have been quite a sight and made a big impression on many people. Now, at the 1893 Parliament in Chicago, Swami Vivekananda said, "I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world tolerance and universal acceptance. We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true. I am proud to belong to a nation which has sheltered the persecuted and the refugees of all religions and all the nations of the world. And then he said that he had prayed this prayer since childhood. As the different streams having their sources in different places all mingle their water in the sea, O Lord, the different paths which humans take through different tendencies, various though they appear, crooked or straight, all lead to thee. And then in one of his speeches at the Parliament, Swami Vivekananda said, I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecutions with the sword or with the pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal. And at the very end of the Parliament, Swami Vivekananda observed, if the Parliament of religions has shown anything to the world, it is this. It has proved that to the world that holiness, purity, and charity are not the exclusive possessions of any religion in the world, and that every system has produced men and women of the most exalted character. At that 1893 Parliament, the president of the Parliament, Charles Bonney, said, when the religious face of the world recognize each other as brothers and sisters, children of one Father, whom all profess to love and serve, then and not until then will the nations of the world yield to the spirit of concord and learn war no more. And the chairman of the Parliament, John Burroughs, said, henceforth, the religions of the world will make war not on each other, but on the giant evils that afflict humankind. So, there was great hope after the 1893 Parliament of the Religions because of the spirit that Vivekananda and representatives of all the major religions had brought to their gathering. But then came the 20th century, the bloodiest century in human history. Because of 2 world wars, in World War I, 20 million people were killed. In World War II, close to 60 million people were killed. There was the Holocaust and other genocides. There were nuclear bombings and at least 80 wars during the last century. So, many religious leaders in Chicago realized we needed to have more parliaments of religions. And so, religious representatives in Chicago then organized the 100th anniversary of the first parliament and had the first modern parliament in 1993. And a number of us from St. Louis were able to attend that parliament and hear religious leaders like this. Rabbi Rudin, who is the director of the American Jewish Committee, said, now over 50 wars are going on, which are based in part on religion. But we live in a time with its unprecedented opportunities to build human bridges of understanding among and not just between, but among all of us who are peoples of faith. And the Dalai Lama, who was able to attend 3 of the modern parliaments, said, harmony between the religions is extremely important. Otherwise, religions also become an instrument for more division among humanity. Sometimes religion has become a source of conflict. He said that is really unfortunate. And Professor Hans Kung reminded the participants of his teaching, there will be no peace among the nations without peace among the religions. Therefore, the religions of the world have to use every possible means to clear up misunderstandings, to do away with stereotype images of other religions, to break down hatred, and to reflect on what they have in common. And throughout his later writings, Professor Kung has argued these other points. There will be no peace among the religions without dialogue among the religions. There will be no dialogue among the religions without investigation into common theological and philosophical foundations. And there will be no world peace or new world order without a common global ethic. And Hans Kung was the main author of the Declaration of the Global Ethic. So it was decided then not to wait another 100 years after the Chicago Parliament in 1993, but to have parliaments every couple of years in different parts of the world so that many people from all around the world could participate. So it was decided then in 1999 to host a parliament in Cape Town, South Africa. And two of the main leaders at that parliament were Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And that was very significant in that country because the system of apartheid had recently ended, racial discrimination. And so Cape Town was the second modern parliament. Then the parliament was moved to Europe, Barcelona, Spain in 2004, and then to Australia in Melbourne 2009, Salt Lake City in 2015, and just 2 months ago in Toronto, Canada, in November of 2018. At the Parliament in Toronto this past November, there were 8,000 people from 80 different countries. 200 different religious groups were represented, including many different indigenous religions. There were 1,000 different programs from 7 in the morning until 10 p.m. at night every day of the Parliament. And when you participate in a Parliament, you get a booklet like this. This shows all the things that go on within 1 week, all the opportunities that you have to go to religious services of different religions, to meet people who practice these different religions, and then to work on common problems. So every morning and every evening at the Toronto Parliament a few months ago, there were 2 plenary sessions each day, one in the morning, one in the evening, where representatives from all major religions focused on a particular topic or problem. And here's the list of 10 different topics that were emphasized in the plenary sessions. The plight of indigenous peoples around the world, faith and interfaith movements, a program on women in different religions. And it's significant that now a woman, Audrey Kitakawa from Japan, is the next chairperson of the Parliament of the Religions. So far, only men have chaired the parliaments, but now a woman from Japan is the next chairperson. Interfaith understanding, a major focus at the Toronto Parliament about climate change. There was a whole plenary on religious music and dance, one on global justice, one on reconciliation, one on the problems of war and violence, and there was a whole plenary on young people, the next generation in different religions. So what I'd like to do now is to share with you some photographs that I've taken at some of the parliaments. Here you have a picture of Rosan Yoshida from the Missouri Zen Center, who attended with me the first 3 parliaments. And here he's seated in his Zazen meditation position. I remember in Barcelona, I helped him carry around about 40 different zafus, little pillows that people could sit on in order to practice Zazen. Then here are some photos of the Parliament in Australia. Here is an indigenous leader playing a didgeridoo. If you've never heard that very unusual instrument that native Australians have used, then just go online and listen to it. Here's an Australian tribal leader. Here he explained the religious beliefs and practices of his people. Native African religious leaders, they were also very prominent, of course, at Cape Town. A Confucianist leader from China. Taoist leaders from China. Here you have people from different religions. You had some Tibetan Buddhists talking with a group of Sikhs. Sometimes at the Parliament it's very informal. In the hallways, people just meet each other and learn about each other. Other times it's in big rooms with speeches. Here you have a Shia Muslim meeting a Hare Krishna representative. Here you have Sikh children with their teacher. Here you have a Zoroastrian. Here you have a Thai Buddhist, a Shinto woman from Japan, some Shinto priest from Japan, and some Hindu women talking with each other, some young Hindu ladies, and here you have some Jains who were represented there, and a rabbi from Australia. A rabbi from Israel. He and the imam from Palestine, shown here, have been working together with many different people in order to try and bring peace to Israel and Palestine. Jews, Christians, and Muslims who have worked together behind the scenes. Here you have a panel of people, and in the middle, in that blue dress, is Sister Carla Mae Streeter of St. Louis. She and I have attended many of the parliaments together. Here she was explaining what we here in St. Louis are doing to promote interfaith relations and how interfaith partnership is working to bring people of all religions together here in St. Louis. So people from other cities of the world were explaining what they were also doing. There I'm with Hans Kung, the main author of the Declaration of the Global Ethic. Here are some Hindu dancers, a Vedanta Swami from Europe, and the Dalai Lama, who has addressed several of the different parliaments. Then there were different times when Tibetan Buddhist monks would do their sand mandalas throughout the week of the parliament. Here you have some monks who are putting the colored grains of sand into a pattern, a mandala, that takes place over many days. And here's the completed work that they finally finished. And after that, they get out their brooms and they sweep it all away in order to learn impermanence, that something that beautiful could just be swept away. So they got on their fancy hats and they started to sweep that beautiful design that they had put together over a week and swept it up. And then after that, they took all that colored sand to the river in Melbourne and dumped it in the river so the fish could enjoy that beautiful sand. So the Tibetan monks have made these sand mandalas at different parliaments and different parts of the world in order to bring a highlight to their culture and their traditions. Just a few years ago, I was able to invite a team of Tibetan monks to St. Louis University, where they were also able to make a sand mandala. Then a few years ago, the Parliament returned to the United States at Salt Lake City, and Karen Armstrong, who is a religious scholar, was one of the main speakers. She is the main author of the Charter for Compassion, which I'll speak about later. Here you have a Hindu representative, another Hindu representative, some Hindu dancers. Here you have three Hindus. The person in the middle is Jack Sisk, who lives here in St. Louis, and the director of the Living Insight Center, just a few blocks from where we are now. Here's a Jain leader meditating before a statue of Mahavira, and children's choirs. They sang many songs. These children are from many different religions, but coming together in order to share a common song. Here in St. Louis, as a part of Interfaith Partnership, we have a program called Sprouts for Peace, where we try to organize programs where people, little children from different religions, come together to learn about each other. Some Hindu dancers, some Buddhist dancers, and some Native African dancers. So another part of the parliaments is to not only emphasize different teachings and beliefs, but also song and dance. This is the main imam of Mecca, representing Islam, another Muslim representative, people from many different religions for one program, Zoroastrian priest, Sikh leaders, representatives of Cao Dai from Vietnam. And these three men call themselves the Three Amigos. Here you have a rabbi, an imam, and in the middle, an Episcopal priest. They're from Seattle, and they have been going around the United States and other parts of the world trying to promote positive relations and friendships as they have formed. Then in Salt Lake City, of course, there was the opportunity to hear the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and also to go to different religious services like these of the Zoroastrians, their fire ceremony. The Sikhs at different parliaments have shared their chanting of their scriptures and also how to tie on a turban for people who are interested in wearing a turban. They've also provided free vegetarian meals to anyone who is interested throughout the parliaments. They ask people to cover their hair, take off their shoes, and they go up and down the rows of people and feed them. There also were Native American leaders like this woman from the Grand Canyon area and other Native peoples from the Americas. They put up their teepees right outside the convention center in Salt Lake City. And there was also the opportunity then to visit Temple Square for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and to see that beautiful house of worship and statue of Jesus Christ. Now here are some photos from the most recent parliament in Toronto. I attended a Hindu service where the main Hindu leader from Toronto performed a fire ceremony, and here on the panels you see representatives of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, more Hindu dancers, another Hindu Swami, some Buddhist leaders from Taiwan, and Buddhist nuns, and a group of Buddhists who were making a presentation about Buddha's teaching. There I am with them. And a Buddhist monk with a Sikh leader, a native African leader, American Sikhs, a representative of the Vatican at the different parliaments, different Catholic cardinals and representatives from the Vatican have brought greetings from the different popes and their messages. A Muslim representative, a representative of the Baha'i faith. This gentleman is from Iran. And this was another panel where you see the three amigos on the right side that I mentioned before, but they discovered that there are three other amigos from Argentina, and they have also joined together a priest, a rabbi, and an imam. So a lot of amigos are going around the world talking about their religion. This was a panel of, from the left, the chief Sephardic rabbi of Israel, one of the chief imams of Palestine, one of the Druze leaders of Israel, and on the far right, a Catholic cardinal who is stationed in Israel. They have been working together in order to try and bring peace to Israel, to the Israelis and the Palestinians. And later this summer, Interfaith Partnership is organizing a tour to Israel, and we hope to meet with these religious leaders. I was also able to hear and meet Arun Gandhi, the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi. And there he talked about what his grandfather had been teaching as far as nonviolence. And joining him was Reverend James Lawson, who was one of the companions of Martin Luther King in the civil rights movement here in the United States. And tomorrow, of course, we remember Dr. King and his teaching of nonviolence and how many of the strategies that King used here in the United States during the 1950s and 60s, he had gotten from Gandhi in the 1930s and 1940s. Then you have this Swami, who represents reform movements within India. And he was joined with people of different religions. The woman on the far left is a Muslim woman from Afghanistan, and then Reverend Lawson from the United States. Then the next woman in the middle is a Jain leader, then the Swami. And the gentleman on the far right is a Palestinian doctor who talked about how several members of his family have been killed and how he tries to bring reconciliation to the peoples of the Middle East. Native Canadian representatives were also a prominent part of the most recent parliament. And here you have in the final plenary session people from different religions, and the third person from the right, that Japanese woman, is the woman I mentioned as the next chair of the Parliament of the World's Religions. And sometimes things get very informal. Not only are there formal speeches and panels, but also sometimes people just get together and want to sing and dance. So here's a good example of what goes on at the parliaments. And then as far as the meal that the Sikh communities of different parts of the world have offered free for people, here you have on the left Lenny Frankel, who is the current president of Interfaith Partnership here in St. Louis, receiving food from some of the Sikh representatives. And then people sit on the floor and share that common meal together. Okay, and then we can do the lights again. So, I wanted to share with you some images of many different people from many different religions at these different parliaments, and how they all have a spirit of cooperation with all members. They try and see what we have in common, even though we might have different beliefs and customs, come from different nations and cultures, what we can work on in order to provide some way in which to improve the world. Now, at the latest Parliament in Toronto, I was fortunate to give one of those sessions that happened in the afternoon. I joined with a Baha'i scholar, Saveda Ewing, giving the program Achieving World Peace, Baha'i and Catholic Teachings, because those two religions in particular have official peace plans on how to develop a democratic world federation or world public authority that would create a world peace system. So for those of you not familiar with the Baha'i faith, let me just mention a few things about it. The Baha'i faith began in the 19th century with a prophet called Baha'u'llah, and he was recognized by his followers as the most recent prophet to be sent to this world. And he developed the ideas of bringing together people from all different nations for a world parliament. And he called the final stage of world peace the most great peace, which would be the spiritual unification of the planet. Now, the Baha'i House of Justice, which is headquartered in Haifa, Israel, says that the acceptance of the oneness of humanity is the prerequisite for establishing a world government. The spiritual principle of the oneness of humanity must be universally proclaimed, taught in schools around the world, and constantly emphasized by every nation. And in a future world federal government, every nation would give up every claim to make war and will only be allowed to maintain armaments for the purpose of maintaining internal order. The Baha'is say that a world federal government should have an international executive, a world parliament, and a supreme tribunal. And Baha'i leaders also stress the need for global economic systems that would involve a global currency, that we'd use the same kind of money no matter where we would travel in the world. Baha'i leaders also promote the idea of everyone learning a universal auxiliary language, a second language, such as Esperanto, in addition to their native language, so that no matter where people would travel in the world, they would be able to communicate directly with a fellow human being. And the Baha'is and many others think that that would be an important thing that would break down prejudices and false assumptions. The popes and bishops of the Catholic Church have also promoted this idea for the need for a world federation. Pope John the 23rd back in the 1960s responded to the Cold War and to the Cuban Missile Crisis in his encyclical, Peace on Earth. He said the world needs to create a world public authority. And the bishops at the Second Vatican Council told Catholics around the world, "It is our clear duty to strain every muscle as we work for the time when all war can be completely outlawed by international consent." This goal of outlawing war undoubtedly requires the establishment of some universal public authority, acknowledged as such by all and endowed with effective power to safeguard on behalf of all security, regard for justice, and respect for human rights. And in 1983, at the height of the Cold War, the American Catholic bishop said, "Just as the nation state was a step in the evolution of government at a time when expanding trade and new weapon technologies made the feudal system inadequate to manage conflicts and provide security, so we are now entering an era of new global interdependencies, requiring global systems of governance to manage the resulting conflicts and ensure our common security. Mutual security and survival require a new vision of the world as one interdependent planet." And the current Pope of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis, has said in his encyclical, "The world needs a public authority in order to solve the crisis of climate change and other global problems." So, according to Catholic leaders, world public authority should be based on the principles of solidarity. That means what's the common good, not just what is good for our country, but what's good for the good of the world. And also the principle of subsidiarity. That means that all problems should be solved on the lowest level possible. So local problems should be solved by local governments, regional problems by regional or state governments, national problems by national governments. But we need a world government, a world federation, in order to solve world problems. And so since we lack that currently, that's why we're not able to solve many of our global problems. There have been movements in that direction, though. After the First World War, the League of Nations was created. But because of the way it was set up, and because the United States was not part of it, it was unable to prevent the Second World War. The United Nations was created after the Second World War, mainly to prevent a Third World War. And so far, it has been able to achieve that goal. But the United Nations has been unable to prevent other wars and solve different global problems for these reasons. First of all, the United Nations is a confederacy of national governments, and that is a weak kind of organization. We know that from American history, when the colonies, after freeing themselves from the British Empire, lived under the Articles of Confederation, but there were still conflicts between states then. So they realized they needed to form a federal government above and beyond each of the state governments. So similarly in the world, the United Nations is a confederacy. It still hasn't moved towards a federation. Secondly, the United Nations is based on the principle of the sovereign equality of all national governments, that each nation is sovereign. That means there's no authority above them, and nations often do whatever they can get by with. The United Nations is based on collective security, which means that wars continue to happen even if the UN General Assembly and Security Council approve such a war, such as the Korean War and the First Gulf War. The United Nations General Assembly is not democratic. That's because every nation in the world, regardless of its population, gets the same one vote. And the General Assembly only can pass non-binding resolutions. In other words, they can say what nations should do, but of course many nations don't always follow those resolutions, even if they vote for it. So we have a big problem in this world. Nations are of different sizes. China has a population of 1.4 billion people. India has a population over 1 billion people. On the other extreme, you have Nauru and Tuvalu, two island nations. They each have 10,000 people. But in the UN General Assembly, each of them and all the other nations in between get the same one vote. So it's possible to get a majority vote in the UN General Assembly that represents only 8% of the world's population. Another problem with the current United Nations is the Security Council is unable to prevent many wars because of the veto power of the permanent nations. The 5 permanent nations in the Security Council are the United States, Russia, China, United Kingdom, and France. Any one of them can veto any resolution, even if the other 14 members of the Council would vote for it. So whenever any one of the 5 permanent members or their allies have been involved in a war, then there's usually a veto and the war continues. The United Nations system is based on dues that national governments are supposed to pay. But nations, including the United States and some other countries, do not always pay their dues. And the budget for the UN is very small anyway. Every state in the United States has a bigger budget than the entire United Nations system. And finally, the United Nations is based on international law, which is simply a system of treaties, where nations sign treaties with each other, agreements with each other. But most national governments keep most of their treaties most of the time, which means that not all countries keep all their treaties all the time. And nations don't have to sign a treaty, and even if a nation signs a treaty, it can withdraw from a treaty. So treaties are not laws. So just as we saw in American history, where the colonies went from the Articles of Confederation to a federal government over the different states, the world, according to the Baha'i faith, the Catholic leaders, and people of many other religions, need to transform the United Nations Confederation into a United Nations Federation. That would mean creating a democratic world parliament to make world laws that concern global problems and relationships between different nations. Such a world federation would need a world executive committee to enforce those laws. Also needed would be a world court that would judge individuals who would violate those laws. Therefore, a world police force would be needed to arrest individuals who would violate world laws, and a world prison system would be needed to incarcerate such individuals. In other words, you wouldn't have to have war anymore. You wouldn't have to bomb countries or create sanctions against whole populations, which causes many problems. And such a world federation would have to be based on an agreed upon world constitution that would make explicit the powers and limitations of the different parts of the World Federation, checks and balances between them, just like in the U.S. Constitution, rights, powers, and limitations that national governments would have, and rights and responsibilities of all citizens of the world. So this is an idea that many people have been thinking about for a long time. It still doesn't exist, and the question is whether such a system will ever be created. But here are a number of people who explain why we need to create such a world system. Henry Nelson Wyman, whose philosophy of religion was the subject of my dissertation, he was also the teacher of Houston Smith, said, "Most people seem to recognize the destructive potentialities of total war, especially in a nuclear age. But many do not seem to recognize that nothing can prevent war short of a world government." Mahatma Gandhi said, "The future peace, security, and ordered progress of the world demand a world federation of free nations, and on no other basis can the problems of our modern world be solved. At the Parliament in Toronto, Swami Agnavesh, you saw his picture with the orange turban, he said in one of his speeches, "Is it not ironic that while we are raising our voices for peace, 1,700 billion US dollars are being spent every year on armaments and the war system?" Swami said, "We, the people of the world, need to unite and demand a world government and a world parliament based on the Earth Constitution." And after his speech, I went up to him and talked with him, and Swami told me, without a world government, we cannot solve our major world problems. And Swami Satprakashananda, who was minister of this Vedanta Society for a long time, wrote a pamphlet in 1973 called World Peace, How? And here's part of Swami Satprakashananda's teaching. When the political systems of the different nations will be so integrated as to constitute one world government, when the economic order of each country will form an integral part of the world economy, when the social institutions of various races will make no invidious distinction between one human and another, claim no undue privileges, and be free from narrowness and prejudice, and when the diverse religious faiths of the world will shake off bigotry, intolerance, and fanaticism, and live in complete harmony so as many phases of one universal religion, then alone will we have world peace. So from reading Swami Satprakashananda's pamphlet, I know that he spent a lot of time thinking about these particular problems and what it would take in order to have peace in this world. And many other religious leaders from many different religions have been thinking along similar lines. So the role of the world's religions, I think then, in developing such a world democracy is to provide a firm foundation. In other words, we just can't change political systems. That won't last and it won't be effective unless underlying a change in the world political system would be teachings by the different religions of the world. So I think that the world's religions need to emphasize these principles. The human family, where every human being is treated humanely. Care for those who are poor and helpless. Humatriotism, in addition to patriotism. There was a scholar at Washington University who created that word, humatriotism, loyalty to the human family. So many of us are patriotic towards our own country, but in addition to that, many people have said we also have to be loyal to the human family, to people, all people around the world. The religions need to emphasize world citizenship in addition to one's national citizenship. Also, the common planet that we share. The religions teach not to destroy species of plants and animals or pollute the air or water of the planet. And the religions of the world need to emphasize nonviolent means for resolving conflicts between groups and nations and develop systems of law and order. And the world religions have been working on this. They have committed themselves at the different parliaments to the global ethic. And you have a copy of the Declaration of the Global Ethic, which I hope all of you take time to read later on. The global ethic that leaders of all religions have agreed to at the parliaments is based on the golden rule that all religions teach in one form or another. For example, Confucius said, "Do not do to others what you do not want done to you." Jesus said, "Treat all people as you want to be treated." And all religions have some formulation of the golden rule. The global ethic is also based on common commandments, common rules of living that all religions teach in one form or another. Do not kill. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not lie. you notice as those that are part of the famous 10 Commandments of the Bible. But all religions follow and teach those commandments. Also to honor your parents and elders and to help the helpless. So the four main directives of the Declaration of the Global Ethic that came out of the modern parliaments is a commitment to a culture of nonviolence and respect for all forms of life. A commitment to a culture of solidarity and a just economic order. A commitment to a culture of tolerance and a life of truthfulness. And a commitment to a culture of equal rights and partnership between men and women. And at the Toronto Parliament just 2 months ago, a fifth directive was added. Commitment to a culture of sustainability and care for our earth. So the common teaching found in the global ethic is do no harm to humans, to plants, to animals, or to our common planet. The world's religions also have committed themselves to the Charter for Compassion, which you also have copies of. That was presented to the Parliament in 2009 by Karen Armstrong, the religious scholar. Compassion means trying to relieve the suffering of other people. And here in St. Louis, we have started Compassionate St. Louis. Over 200 cities around the world have tried to make the Charter for Compassion part of the main goals of all aspects of their city. Trying to get people from the religious sector, the educational sector, the healthcare sector, law enforcement, the legal profession, all different aspects of the business community, all different aspects of the community to agree to the teaching of compassion as a central goal that every city should have. So the parliaments of the world's religions have been an important means for dealing with our global problems. We just haven't solved them all yet. But hopefully in centuries to come we will be able to create systems by which we can solve our global problems. But we can apply the wisdom and the ethics of the world's religions to many of the problems that we share. The parliaments of the world's religions have been important international gatherings to promote tolerance, understanding, cooperation, appreciation of similarities and differences, and a commitment to interreligious dialogue or creative interchange among the world's religions. So here in St. Louis, we're trying to do what is done at the parliaments around the world through interfaith partnership. We're trying to bring people of all different religions together. Swami Chaitanyananda, Swami Nishpapananda, and all members of the Vedanta Society have been very committed over many years to be part of interfaith partnership and to try and promote religious understanding and appreciation throughout this city. So thank you, Swami, for everything you've done in St. Louis to promote positive relations between religions. And we have many different programs through interfaith partnership, like the trip to Israel that I mentioned before, where we will meet with religious leaders, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and Baha'is, to see what they are doing to try and bring more peace to the Middle East. And we also have programs through Compassionate St. Louis and other programs of dialogue where we try to bring people together in order to understand each other. So we here in St. Louis are doing a lot, I think, and so are people in many other cities. And then we all come together at the international parliaments of religions to learn from each other and see what people in different parts of the world are doing. So I've been very fortunate to attend these parliaments and learn so much from them, to meet people from so many different religions around the world. And I hope that all of you in the future sometime will be able to be a participant at one of the future parliaments of the world's religions.
My heartfelt thanks for David to present to us the wonderful presentation of parliament of religions of different times, different years, all over the world. I was thinking, without going to visit any places, we got all experience in one lecture. The way he presented the whole picture, it is so beautiful. It has a tremendous educational value and eye-opening. It is a really thought-provoking, inspiring, educational presentation. When he was talking, I was thinking about organization. I wrote an article in 1980, A New Religion Begins. Swami Vivekananda had a dilemma. In 1895 in New York, Thousand Island Park, he was thinking, shall I organize or not? If I organize, the spirit will diminish. And if I do not organize, the message will not spread. Religion, if you want to, it needs organization. That Swamiji saw in America. They have a wonderful power to organize. Vedanta is never an organized religion. It is a mendicant's religion. When Swamiji was in America, he was talking about universal religion. He gave lectures in California as well as in New York. He was trying to demonstrate that how we can bring all faiths together. Each religion must grow in its own way. Swamiji was thinking, if all people think alike, do you know what will happen? We'll be like Egyptian mummies. Well, let us watch each other thousands of years. No brain function. You will find no new thoughts, new ideas will not come. We need many religions, many faiths, many paths. Some people that he was talking about for yogas, some are very emotional. Bhakti yoga will work. Some are very rational. Jnana yoga will work. Some are very meditative. Raja yoga will work. Some are very active. Karma yoga will work. You cannot put all human beings in the same fold. Not possible. Organization is necessary. But no organization can function without rules and regulations. Too many rules and regulations bring a stagnant in religion. Religion cannot function, cannot breathe if too many rules and regulations. There are nearly 600-700 laws of Moses. Religion could not function. Jesus brought the religion of love. Then it broke all barriers so that they can breathe. Again, finally, you need love. Love for each other. That Christ taught. That is my last commandment I tell unto you, love one another. Then religion will function. I remember the story of John in Ephesus, when he became old, could not lecture anymore. The congregation would bring him to the church, carrying him in a chair. Tell us something. You are a direct disciple of Jesus. We like to hear something from you. Love one another. Next Sunday, same thing. Next Sunday, same thing. Then somebody says, did you not hear anything else? What more to tell you? Just love one another. That we need. Hindus, Christians, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, all religions, we must love one another. How is it possible? That religion, as we were talking about the 10 Commandments, that is universal. All the golden rules are universal. Every religion demonstrates, practices all those things. But do you know what? It is in the books, not in practice. Otherwise, if we practice religion, all war will stop. And when does the war begins? Do you know what the UN says? He gave a lot of information about UN. The war first begins in the human mind. I'm the President of the United States or Russia or China. What came in my mind? Go. All soldiers, army, arms, ammunition will go to that direction. Really, all war begins in human mind. He emphasized, perhaps he wants to, about global ethics. Global ethics. What is ethics? Swamiji says, do you know, just one beautiful definition Swami Vivekananda gave. Do you know what is ethics? Not I, thou. That is ethics. Destroy your selfishness. Love one another. Be good Samaritan. That is called ethics. That brings kingdom of heaven to this world. Religion begins when we have love for one another. Anyhow, I do not want to give a talk, but I wanted to share that you know that Swami Vivekananda's this 125th anniversary of the parliaments we shall observe. Next Sunday I shall speak about Vivekananda after the Parliament of Religions. Then in the May we have program. I am thinking, let us see whether we can make more programs or not. But I really appreciate the presentation of Javid. And moreover, this audiovisual unit has a tremendous impact on human mind. And he brought so much information. I didn't know all those things the way he said. Many things I learned today about the human functioning, about the that idea of one world. I don't know how will it work. The world is so variety, multiplicity, diversity. It is an idea. No, it is a wonderful idea. But how it should be implemented, I don't know. I really learned many things today. Thank you. Thank you, Javid. Om Satoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mritturma Amritam Gamaya, Abhiravirma Edi, Rudra Jatte Dakshinam Mukham, Tenamam Pahi Nityam, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through, and guide us evermore with thy loving presence. Peace, 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 and food.